Lesson 10, Nuclear Reactions and Radioactive Decay. So, we have learned about chemical reactions in the first semester, and as a little review, chemical reactions involve, here's an example of hydrogen peroxide breaking up into water and oxygen. So, the bonds in the hydrogen peroxide, so here these red is the hydrogen, red is the oxygen in this picture, right? And then we have the gray hydrogens. And they were all bonded together, right? And then those bonds broke, and then new bonds formed between oxygen and hydrogen here, with an oxygen and two hydrogens to make water, and then two of the oxygens bound together with each other. Happens to be a double bond. So chemical reactions occur when bonds are broken. And broken first in the reactants and then reformed in different combinations in the products. And they involve absorbing or releasing energy, chemical reactions. This particular reaction of hydrogen peroxide breaking up into water and oxygen releases energy. It's exothermic, but it's not a ton of energy, not compared to a nuclear reaction, which we'll learn about in a moment, which releases a lot of energy. So they have small energy changes. And another thing is they only involve the valence electrons. All right, and you're going to answer a question about what the valence electrons are. And so let's look here. We have, that's what bonds are. Bonds only involve valence electrons. So here's another picture of hydrogen peroxide. So here's one hydrogen peroxide molecule. And the red represents the nucleus of each oxygen in the hydrogen peroxide. The 8 is it has 8 protons, right? And it has 8 neutrons, most oxygens as well. And then the hydrogen has 1 proton, so that's why it's just a plus. We could write 1 plus. And so what we have is the valence electrons, right? So oxygen has 2 inner electrons, and then it has 6 valence electrons. And then hydrogen brings 1 valence electron to the bond, and then that becomes 2 valence electrons that share a bond, right? And then this oxygen is also sharing, these 2 oxygens are sharing their valence electrons with each other there, and then this hydrogen is sharing a valence electron, and that makes a, actually you can answer that in the video. What kind of bond is it when they share electrons? Okay, and then when they reform here, when some of those bonds break, right? Those bonds will break, then new bonds are formed, right? Now we have bonds between one oxygen, 2 hydrogens, right, to make water, and we have, again, just the valence electrons. Notice the inner electrons never got involved at all, right? These 2 inner electrons in the first energy shell of oxygen are still there with their nucleus. And the nuclei didn't change either. The nuclei of the oxygens all still have 8 protons, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 oxygen nuclei, and then after the reaction there's still 4 oxygen nuclei, and they all have 8 protons. Conservation of mass. And the hydrogen nuclei all still have 1 proton. So we can also then write that atoms keep the same identity, right? Oxygen is still oxygen after the reaction. Identity, right? Although they may gain, lose, or share electrons and form new substances. We could call it actually compounds, right? Like here we do have a new substance or compound. We have water instead of hydrogen peroxide. We have water and oxygen gas. So that's chemical reactions, which we've learned about extensively. Now we're going to see how is that different from a nuclear reaction. So here's an example of a nuclear reaction, and this is uranium. And uranium's enormous. It has 92 protons here, and I can't remember, like 100 and something neutrons, right? So it's a huge nucleus. In this picture, we have not drawn all of the valence electrons. It would be ginormous. But in a nuclear reaction in fission, which is breaking apart of nuclei, a big nucleus breaks apart into smaller ones. So this uranium is unstable, it can't stay together, and it breaks apart, in this example, into krypton and barium, which have 36 protons and 56 protons. So those added together make 92. Another type of nuclear reaction is when small elements fuse together to make a larger element. So we can add some things here. This is one proton, which is hydrogen, combining with another proton to form an element with two protons, which is helium. And that happens in the sun. That is what's going on in the sun, is fusion. And we know, of course, that releases an enormous amount of energy. We could draw a big E, as does fission releases quite a bit of energy, right? That's why nuclear power plants will have use uranium and the fission of uranium to create quite a bit of power. So, nuclear reactions occur when nuclei combine or split and emit radiation. They are large energy changes, and they can involve all the subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons, as we'll see in examples of different types in a moment. And so it's when atoms of one element are converted into atoms of another element. Okay, so you're going to answer a question in a video about the differences between chemical and nuclear reactions. Let's do a little review of isotope notation. We're going to use this. So, in isotope notation, when we have an element and we have a number, it's like a little subscript and then a superscript. The subscript is the atomic number. And if you remember from chemistry, atomic number tells us the number of protons. And then the superscript is the mass number, and that tells us the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So in this example, lithium, we can see here from that 3, we know there's 3 protons, and there must be 4 neutrons, because 3 plus 4 equals 7. That gives us our mass number, how many total protons plus neutrons there are. Another way, notation, another type of isotope notation is to put a dash and to just list the mass number. So lithium-7, we would call it. Because technically we don't need to write the atomic number, because we know, since it's lithium, it must have 3 protons. Here's our periodic table. Lithium always has 3 protons. That's what makes it lithium. Okay, you're going to try this one in the video. Okay, so this note sheet is looking at nuclear reactions that are decay, so fission, big things breaking up into smaller, big nuclei breaking up into smaller. So that is also known as nuclear decay. So nuclear decay has a couple different names. We sometimes refer to it as radioactive decay, or, as we said above, nuclear fission, like a fissure breaking apart. And it's when an unstable nucleus loses energy by radiation and is transformed into a more stable nucleus. So any material containing unstable nuclei is considered radioactive. And so it turns out that when you try to get a lot of protons and neutrons together, nuclei are not stable. So sometimes, like there's forms of carbon. Carbon-14, for example, is not stable because it has 8 neutrons, so that it has the balance between protons and neutrons is too is not stable. Whereas carbon-12 is stable. If you have 6 protons and 6 neutrons, that's stable. Or carbon-13, 6, 7 neutrons, that's stable. So you can have smaller elements that are radioactive that have just more neutrons than is stable. And then it turns out that every single element that has more than 84 protons is radioactive. So everything from 84 on is unstable. It will decay. Sometimes, some of them decay really quickly. They have short, what we call half-lives. Others take, in the number of seconds or minutes. Others take, millions of years. And then just to point this out here, so that this little thing here means that these actually belong in the periodic table there. We would insert this whole 2 rows here. And these elements here from 95 on up to 118 are synthetic. That means are not found in nature. They were made in a lab in between the years 1944 and 2010. These were made. They're so unstable they do not occur in nature. Right, back to our notes. So we're going to learn about alpha decay, beta decay, and on the other page, positron emission. So the different particle, an alpha particle cannot travel through human skin or flesh, so that's actually not dangerous for us. A beta particle can, so that can travel through our bodies and mess with our DNA and cause, radiation, poisoning, cancer, etc. Gamma radiation is very intense and can travel through humans and aluminum, but not lead. Okay, so we're going to do one here, and then we'll save the others for the next video. So alpha decay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save these all for the next video. So that's it for this video.